Hey everybody, I hope you've had a great weekend. I hope it's been good and graced. And for today's installment or episode of the Liturgy is Mercy, I thought I'd do something a little bit different. Today I had the honor of being the catechist with the RCAA group today. So I got to take the catechumens and the candidates and catechumens out and hang out with them and do a roundtable discussion about the liturgy of the word today. And so I thought that for this episode, what we could do is I would just take my PowerPoint from today and do a video, and we would just ask, where is mercy revealed in the liturgy of the word today? So, begin with the first reading. The first reading for this week is Isaiah 62, verses 1 through 5. I am going to be reading out of the NIV, and it begins, "For Zion's sake I will not keep silent, for Jerusalem's sake I will not remain quiet, till her vindication shines out like the dawn, her salvation like a blazing torch. The nations will see your vindication, and all kings your glory. You will be called by a new name that the mouth of the Lord will bestow. You will be a crown of splendor in the Lord's hand, a royal diadem in the hand. No longer will they call you deserted, or name your land desolate, but you will be called Hephzibah, and your land Beulah. For the Lord will take delight in you, and your land will be married. As a young man marries a young woman, so will your builder marry you. As a bridegroom rejoices over his bride, so will your God rejoice over you." A couple things I wanted to point out real quickly before we change the page here is this word Hephzibah means to take delight in, and the word Beulah means to be married. And so we know about Hebrew language that whenever something is extremely important, it's oftentimes repeated, so to have an emphatic effect on the text. And so what we find here right from the get-go when we're looking at mercy is that to be delighted in, for God to be delighted in us and to be married to us is so important that it is repeated. So, what speaks to our hearts in the first reading? That's the question that I asked the RCA catechumens and candidates today, and for our purposes, we would ask, where is mercy revealed in the first reading? Here are some points of interest. Historically, in Isaiah 62, Israel is returning from exile in Babylon. They had been overpowered and defeated by Nebuchadnezzar and his army. And in Isaiah 62, we see them coming back from exile. And so, God is rejoicing over the restoration of Israel. Well, here's where mercy shows up. One of the most powerful and old themes of the faith and the Bible is restoration. Matter of fact, that's the purpose of mercy. God extends mercy so that we can be restored to Him. He's from the beginning, from Genesis 3, been trying to restore us and creation to its original and our original intent and form. So restoration is what mercy is for. And God always rejoices when He has the opportunity to restore us. And long term, that is what we are partnering in the gospel with Him to do, is helping Him restore other people, thus restoring creation all the way back to Him. When a new name is given in Scripture, it signals a change in direction. And we see here that God says He's going to change their name. Look from Abram to Abraham, from Jacob to Israel. Everywhere God changes the name of a person or a place, that means He is taking a different direction. There's going to be a change. There's something new about to happen. And then obviously the overtones of marriage in this passage are meant to express God in covenant relationship with His people. The fact that God wants to be in relationship with us is mercy. So that is something to be celebrated, something to rejoice, is marriage with God. Our second reading today comes from 1 Corinthians chapter 12. And the first three verses read, "There are different kinds of gifts, but the same Spirit distributes them. There are different kinds of service, but the same Lord. There are different kinds of working, but in all of them and in everyone, it is the same God at work." You see what we have here. Different gifts, same Spirit. Different service, same Lord. Different working, same God. Now, I wonder why St. Paul made this point. That was my next question. What do you think St. Paul is saying here? Well, we know about repetition, we know about emphasis, right? So the fact that there are different gifts is very, very important for us to understand. And the fact that they are given by the same God and same Spirit is also very, very important for us to understand. Going on in verses 7 through 9, now to each one the manifestation of the Spirit is given for the common good. To one there is given through the Spirit a message of wisdom, to another a message of knowledge by means of the same Spirit, to another faith by the same Spirit, to another gifts of healing by that one Spirit. You see the repetition. And then that is going to become important in just a minute. And then we wrap it up. To another miraculous powers, to another prophecy, to another distinguishing between spirits, to another speaking in different kinds of tongues, and to still another the interpretation of tongues. All these are the work of one and the same Spirit, and He distributes them to each one just as He determines. So how does the second reading speak to our hearts? Where does mercy show up? Well, the fact that we are given gifts, that is a form of mercy. And what's beautiful is what we see in the passage here that St. Paul is telling us about these gifts is A, they're not ours, they were given to us, that's mercy. And B, they are for the common good. They are to build up and edify the church. That is mercy. A little history and context here about Corinthians. There's a lot of fighting going on in the Corinthian church. I think way back in even chapter 3, St. Paul has to address that they're fighting over whose teacher is most right. You know, some of them follow Paul, some of them follow Apollos, and some of them follow Cephas, and they're all fighting not over what they've been taught, but actually who's right and whose leader or teacher is the best. Their fondness for their particular favorite teacher has become so intense that there were quarreling and jealousy among them. And we all know whenever church people quarrel and are jealous of each other, the mission of God is what suffers. Hearts are what suffers. The world and culture is what suffers. And ironically, we become not merciful, but merciless. So, Paul addresses this fighting about the teachers, and just when he thinks it's settled, they turn inward and start fighting over their gifts. They begin to fight over whose spiritual gift were better or more important. And there's a lot that is said about the gift of tongues that's argued over a lot, but really it's any of them, right? So the question then begs, what happens when we lose sight of the common good and the giver of the gifts, right? So when we lose sight of the common good and think that the gift is for us and for our disbursement and to do with what we please, we totally pervert the gift. We totally miss the mark as what the gift was for. Also, when we value the gift more than the giver, pardon me, we have a tendency to elevate ourselves and think maybe the gift is because we're awesome or cool or spiritual. And we have a tendency to not thank God for what He's given us, and then turn around and use it for our own selfish gain and ambition. Whenever we do that, mercy evaporates. Mercy leaves. So, how do I think, or you think, the second reading connects to the first reading? Well, obviously there's an overtone of gift and an overtone of marriage. So, just personally in my life, it's a challenge to my heart that anytime I do not think that my marriage is a gift, I'm in trouble. I'm not being a person of mercy. I'm missing mercy from God, because God's going to give me the most mercy He's going to give me through my wife. God is going to reveal Himself the most He's ever going to reveal Himself through my marriage. So anytime I'm thinking that my marriage is to serve me instead of the common good of the marriage, I'm going to miss out on that mercy. Anytime I'm thinking that my marriage is good because of me instead of it because it's a gift from God, I'm going to miss out on that mercy. I'm going to miss out on what God's trying to do in my life. So to me personally, that's how they connect. That leads us to today's gospel. The gospel for today is commonly referred to the wedding at Cana. It's St. John chapter 2 verses 1 through 11. On the third day, a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee, Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples had all been invited to the wedding. So right here we have a wedding in a town called Cana. Scholars still debate over where this is located, but they're most agree that it's a location about 4.5 miles northeast of Nazareth. Now that would make sense because we see that there's at least a whole family of Nazarenes, which is Jesus and Mary and his family, invited to this wedding. And it would make sense that those communities are close, and that's why they would know one another. So, there's a couple hundred people in the village of Cana, is what scholars infer. And that's basically what Nazareth and most of these villages were. So the other thing I want to point out is these were very close friends of Jesus. How would you like that, to be able to say, like, Jesus was at my wedding because we're really good friends. He performed that, right? Matter of fact, he brought the wine. We'll find out later. So not only is Jesus' friends there and is Jesus there, but Jesus' mother is there. So this is kind of a family thing. So this family that's getting married and experiencing the marriage, Jesus' family would have known very well. So, when the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no more wine." "Woman, why do you involve me?" Jesus replied, "My hour has not yet come." Now, I want to address this word woman because I've heard a lot of people say that sometimes the church doesn't put Mary in her right place, and clearly Jesus had put her in her right place because here he rebuked her. This is not true at all. The other place we see Jesus call Mary this name is at the foot of the cross when he gives her to St. John to take care of. He says, "Woman, your son, and son, your mother." So clearly this isn't a rebuke or him putting anybody in their place. This is actually a term of respect and endearment, and it can be most closely translated to the word man. Okay? What's also significant here is my hour has not yet come. Now, throughout history, I believe Jesus was right here. I believe that originally his hour had not come. But throughout history, God has responded to his people. God has broken into humanity. And to me, this is mercy because it's like it wasn't the hour for Jesus to come, but the people needed Jesus to come in this hour. So he's going to come in this hour. And to me, that's a beautiful picture of mercy. At the next statement, Mary said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Now, what does she mean here? I don't know if Mary knew exactly what Jesus was going to do. Probably not. But I do know that Mary knew Jesus better than anyone else. She was his mother. Not only that, not only had she birthed him and raised him and lived with him for all these years, somewhere around 30 at this point, but also she knew that he was divine. And she knew what had happened in her womb. And so they had a very, very special connection there. And this is what she knew. She knew that he was about to do something different and something unique and something that had never been done before. And so she wanted those servants to be prepared for whatever it was that he was going to do. And we know that Mary was respected by these servants because they obeyed her. Nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kind used by the Jews for ceremonial washing, each holding from 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, "Fill the jars with water," so they filled them to the brim. Then he told them, "Now draw some out and take it to the master of the banquet." They did so, and the master of the banquet tasted that water that had been turned into wine. He did not realize where it had come from. That will be important in just a minute, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. They called the bridegroom aside and said, Then he called the bridegroom aside, and he said, "Everyone brings out the choice wine first, and then the cheaper wine after the guests have had too much to drink. But you have saved the best till now." What Jesus did here in Cana of Galilee was the first of the signs through which he revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. This is the word of the Lord. So, what speaks to your heart in the gospel? That's what I asked today. And where is mercy showing up in and revealing itself in the gospel today is the question we will ask. The first thing I want to say is, years ago when I read this, I was like, so let me get this straight. Jesus is revealing himself to humanity. God is revealing himself incarnate to the world. And he's going to do this at a party full of drunk people, at a marriage, at a wedding. And his miracle, what's going to establish him, is he's going to help a bunch of drunk people keep their buzz by getting them more wine. Really? Well, obviously we know that would be silly to go through and in there. And looking deeper, I want to point out first that this story signals two things. First, it signals how Jesus will do his ministry. It is going to be new, it is going to be different, and it's going to be like something they've ever seen before. It's very important that this miracle sets the tone for the rest of Jesus' ministry. Also, what's worth pointing out is this story sets the tone of how St. John will write his gospel. He had the benefit of writing his gospel late. As a matter of fact, by the time St. John wrote this gospel, Christians had been expelled from the synagogue and was now part of an illegal religion. So he had the opportunity to reflect on what had already been written, fill in the blanks, explain things that he thought needed to be explained more. And I can tell you it influenced how, who, and why he wrote, because the fact that they were been expelled from the synagogue. So, 4 more thoughts about today's gospel. First, this is a luminous mystery. And the reason why I say this is obviously about marriage and it's about so many different things, but chiefly it is a mystery. And so no matter how many times we read it, no matter how many times we go over it, no matter how many times we study it, we're going to get different stuff out of it, and we're not going to get everything out of it because it's a mystery. Now, some people throw their hands up there and go, well, if it's a mystery, why even try? No. That's even more reason to read it over and over again, because you can become like me and go from thinking this is about Jesus helping a bunch of people keep their buzz and get their drink on, to what it's really about and what we're going to talk about going forward. So it's a mystery, keep that in mind. Second, I want to comment on filling the jars with water. This was so important and easy to miss. What you see here in the screen is on the left you have a picture of wineskin, okay? On the right you have pictures of amphorae. Now, wine in the first century were stored in 2 things. Wineskins, which would be more for the dinner table, the family, it was informal on the left. On the right, amphorae were for formal occasions such as weddings and feasts and celebrations and banquets. And you can see, for lack of a better word, they taper off down at the bottom. And that's so they can fit together better in the hull of a boat as they're crossing bodies of water, and you can fit more together. Now, this is a Google image of a stone jar for ceremonial washing. As a matter of fact, the caption said that church tradition holds that this is one of them from Cana. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, and truthfully, it really doesn't matter for today's story. But I wanted you to see what's going on here. Now, this is why this is so important, because what Jesus did here is he mixed things that did not need or should not be mixed, all right? Jesus went out of his way to fill the stone jar with wine instead of the clay pots that were made for wine. This was so offensive to the people of the party and the Jewish culture. Like I said, he mixed things that weren't supposed to be mixed, right? We know that you can have certain things to eat and these certain things to eat, but you can't mix those things. And not only was this about hygiene, but it was about ceremony and spirituality, okay? So what Jesus was doing here by this, it was very, very, very deliberate. He was saying, I'm going to mix things that y'all don't normally mix. I'm going to put things in things that y'all don't normally do that to, that you're not used to. So this is why it said that the master of the banquet did not know where the wine is from. They put that in there because had he known that it was mixed in the ceremonial stone jars, he would have never ever tried it, right? So this is a metaphor of Jesus going, not only am I doing something new here, I'm doing it in a way that has never been done before. I'm doing it in a way that you're not used to. And you know what? I may do it in a way that some of your laws say not to do it. Some of your spiritual laws may be against. In reality, this was a metaphor for his ministry and the way he would be operating in the lives of people, right? He was doing a new thing. And what do I mean by people? Well, we've all been this way at some point in our life where we, for lack of better words, we saw our life like a pie. We may have the marriage slice and the kid slice and the work slice and the fun slice and the hobby slice. And then right now there's the God slice and then the church slice and then there's my friends at church slice who are different from my other friends slice. And we have a tendency sometimes to compartmentalize our life like that. But Jesus was saying, no, 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 no. Life is mixed in together. God is mixed and stirred through all of the parts of your life. So it was a metaphor for how he was operating in the lives of people. Secondly, Jesus understood that religion had a tendency to become rigid and brittle. And we know that, right? Because, and I'm not criticizing religion here. Religion does many great things, but in religion's effort to preserve and to celebrate and to pay homage and to remember the amazing things that God has done, we can lose sight of the spirit of what he did, and we can lose sight of what he's doing today. And Jesus knew people were like this too. Um, you know, we know that the way that they make buildings now, especially out in California, is they make them flexible and pliable and bendable and fluid, because if an earthquake comes and they're not, and they're rigid and they're brittle, what happens? They fall down, right? So even though it's not in the Beatitudes, we should definitely say, blessed are the flexible. Blessed are those who go with the flow. Blessed are the bendable, right? Because what Jesus knew and what we know is that what doesn't bend breaks. We do not want to be a people that breaks. We do not want to be a church or a faith that breaks. So we must bend to what the Spirit is doing, the new thing that Jesus is doing. Third, there was the line that really struck me, but you have saved the best till now. Wow. What was he saying? But Jesus is the best. God had also saved the best for now. You know, back in the Old Testament, I'm reminded of where God says, I would look across time for someone to stand in the gap. God was always looking for a way to connect and restore his people. And then he saved the best for now, for Cana. Right here in that moment, he had saved the choice wine for them. Jesus was the choice wine. In the Old Testament, wine was a symbol that something new and amazing was going to happen. Wine spoke of an incredible future of abundance and blessing. Wine is a symbol of what God is going to grant, give, bring, or do. Whenever wine shows up, something great is going to happen. It was promise. It was future. It was tomorrow. Wine meant we got to live another day. We got to fight another battle. Wine was so central to the culture that it just spoke of hope, blessing, and a wonderful and hopeful future. So, it was very, very important that as Jesus is revealed and God is revealing how things are going to go now into the future, that the image of wine and all it meant and all its pregnancy was used. It was so important that God point out that Jesus was the wine. And I can tell you that that wasn't lost on the ears of the people who read this in the first century. Now, this leads to the last point I wanted to make about the gospel today. And I love how God and Jesus do this. And it wasn't just a little wine. Lastly, the gospel says, nearby stood 6 stone water jars, each holding from 20 to 30 gallons. All right. Basically, what Jesus was doing today at the wedding of Cana was very, very important to read between the lines and understand one of the most powerful and common elements of Jesus' ministry. We said earlier there were probably a couple hundred people in Cana. So let's say everybody in Cana was at this wedding. Let's throw out another 100 from Nazareth and say that it was a big wedding. You know, 300 people is a big wedding by today's standards. And we know that by what we know of the first century in that area, that would have been a massive wedding. But let's say that's how many were there. Well, they were already drunk, that we know that from the story. All Jesus really needed to do to provide more wine was fill up maybe half of one of those stone jars and turn it into wine. That would have been plenty for everybody to keep going the way they were going. So why in the world did Jesus fill up all 6? Why in the world did Jesus fill up and make 180 gallons of wine? You know, it's a good question. So I think there is a hint in John chapter 10, verse 10 that I have here on the screen. The thief does not come except to steal and to kill and to destroy. I have come that they may have life and that they may have it more abundantly. I think what Jesus was doing here was he was saying, not only am I coming, I'm coming in a new way, I'm coming in a different way, I'm coming to mix things up, but I think he was also saying, I'm coming to bring abundance. I think that Jesus was um, definitely communicating with the 180 gallons that I'm going to supply more than all your needs. Isn't that a beautiful, beautiful message? When we focus on ourselves, though, we have a tendency to miss that mercy. Abundance is clearly mercy, but what happens when we're looking in the mirror all the time? We have a tendency to miss out on God's mercy and what He is providing for us. It's easy to miss out on mercy if we are focused on ourselves. Now, how is it that we are to respond to all of this amazing abundance and all of this mercy? Well, I think that we do it in gratefulness. Gratefulness allows us to experience a great fullness of God. When we are grateful, we are evoking the fullness of God's abundance in our lives. And man, that is the truth. We are going to pray a prayer of gratefulness here in a minute, but I wanted to also say the way that we respond to this abundance and this mercy and this newness and this choice wine and these 180 gallons, this cup running over, this more than I could ever dream or ever ask, is the mercy that's being extended and poured out to me. How do I respond? Well, if you were in Catholic Church today, you responded in the responsorial psalm. So I would like to take a minute to read that to you again. Now, if you want to know what this sounds like, I love our choir and our music director and our cantor. They do such a beautiful job. They really do. And they did a beautiful job today. So shout out to Simon, Margaret, and the choir. But when I was really thinking about this, I was like, I'm going to tell you what this should sound like right now. This responsorial psalm should sound like Kool and the Gang. It should sound like, celebrate good times, come on. There should be that funky bass line, that guitar, that bass guitar. It should have been some dancing and carrying on in church today. It should have gotten crazy in there. That's the response that we should have had. And listen to what the responsorial psalm says, because David, or whoever wrote this, totally got it. It's out of Psalm 96. Proclaim his marvelous deeds to all the nations. Okay, when do you proclaim what God has done for you? When you see what God has done for you. And when God has done something for you and you don't proclaim it, it's because you haven't noticed it yet. He goes on to say, sing to the Lord a new song. Sing to the Lord, all you lands. Sing to the Lord, bless his name. Proclaim his marvelous deeds to all the nations. Announce his salvation day after day. Tell his glory among the nations, among all people, his wondrous deeds. Can you hear Kool and the Gang here? Can you hear that funky bass line? Because something has happened here. It's a celebration. It's a right response to restoration, to marriage, to different gifts, to one Spirit, to one God, to choice wine, to 180 gallons of abundance. This is how you respond to that. Give to the Lord, you families of nations. Give to the Lord glory and praise. Give to the Lord the glory due his name. Worship the Lord in holy attire. Tremble before him, all the earth. Say among the nations, the Lord is king. He governs the people with equity. And hallelujah that he governs the people with equity, because I can tell you, no humans do. Any time, and that's our problem, it's a part of the human condition, that a human gets the chance to govern. I can't think of a time they've done it with equity. That's one of the problems with our world. So that's what gratefulness looks like. Okay, now, just as a practice, I would like to try a prayer of gratefulness. And if you're listening or watching this video, close your eyes. I'll read the rest of it to you. You don't need to see any. I want you to first trust that this abundant life exists and is available to us. And listen, depending on where you're at, I know that that's hard. I know some of you are going through things that makes it very difficult for you to believe and trust in abundance, or whether it exists, or maybe you do believe that it exists, you just don't think it's available or for you. And I'm just with you in that as much as I can be. And I don't mean to downplay it, because I've been there where I didn't believe in abundance, or sure as heck didn't believe it was for me. I just want to say grace and peace be with you. I just pray that God will reveal himself. And I can tell you there's something so holy about being grateful when you don't see anything to be grateful for. First, I want you to think of something that's very big in your life, something that's very easy to be thankful for. When I say, what are you thankful for? Man, it just jumps right to your mind, right? Maybe it's a spouse, maybe it's kids, maybe it's a job, maybe you have a beautiful home and you're incredibly grateful for that. Whatever it is, I want you to allow that gratefulness to fill your heart. And then I want you to say to God, thank you for whatever it is. You know, for me, the thing that comes to mind is my wife. So thank you, God. Thank you for Heather. Now think of something mundane and you have no emotional attachment for. Like right now, because I have such very professional digs, my laptop and microphone is sitting on a TV tray. What? Because we do things high society here. Well, what does it look like for me to be thankful for this TV tray? I mean, it's mundane. I have no emotional attachment to it. It's just a tool. Now, like a table, allow that gratefulness to fill your heart. God, thank you for this TV tray. Thank you that if it wasn't for this, my laptop would be on the floor right now, and so would the microphone, and it'd be sound all scratchy and terrible, and my phone would fall and hit one of the 4 dogs beneath me in the head. So let your heart fill with gratitude about that mundane thing that you're not attached to, and say to God, thank you for the table. Thank you for the TV tray. Now, lastly, this may be a little difficult. I want you to think about something you despise. Maybe it's an injustice. Maybe it's someone that's hurt you. Maybe it's a broken relationship. Maybe it's a regret over a bad decision. Maybe it's health problems, financial issues, whatever it may be. I want you to try to open your heart and practice gratefulness for that. And I want you to name it. I'm going to tell you why. Because it too is a gift in that if we allow God, he will use that to draw us to him. Whatever that problem or issue or whatever it is, that person, it is a reminder of the fresh and desperate need of God's grace that is ever present in our lives. And it can do that for us. And so it becomes a gift. And so right now, or maybe this week, or maybe in the near future, I want you to begin to think about trying to practice gratefulness for that thing and see how your posture, maybe see how your perspective changes. Because we know about prayer that it's not the circumstances that change sometimes. It's never God that changes. But prayer always changes us. It'll always change our posture, and it may change our perspective. That's what I believe mercy is. As we've been extended this mercy, and the only right response is praise, glory, and gratefulness. Thank you for listening. I hope you have a great week. And until next week when we talk about the liturgy is mercy, grace and peace be with you.